Hello, everybody. It's 15 years. So I've got my original OG Demons Peachville High School cheerleading shirt from the days of 2012. This shirt is 13 years old, but the story itself is 15 years old. It is really, really impacting me today. I feel like I have just had a day. If you hear banging noises, it's because we are having wind gusts over 50 miles per hour here, and it is pulling parts of my roof off again. And I'm over it. That is not celebratory. I'm very upset about it, but we're hanging in there. We've got somebody already coming to look at it tomorrow, but just if you hear it, just know that it's just another issue. We had this problem. I'm trying to think if that was last year. I think it was late last year or it was earlier this year. On the other side of the house, and now it's happening here. Our neighbor's trampoline is in our yard. We have like neighbor's furniture in our yard from 3 houses down. It is crazy today. Same winds there in Austin. Yeah, it's bad. I think the sustained winds have been like 25 to 30 miles an hour all day long since last night, and then gusts over 50. So uh, I will say my heart goes out to the people of Jamaica and Cuba and other places affected by the hurricane, because those are like 180. It's just awful. Not part of my roof, the roof, like the shingles. If it was the actual roof, that would be terrible. Gusty wind the other day and lost power. Yeah, there have been people reporting on the neighbor app that there's an entire section of our town that does not have power as well. So luckily we do have power here. If it goes off, I will let you guys know. But getting to the good stuff. George is not home because he is with Andrew, who is getting award for a honor roll today at the school. So good luck to Andrew. He's doing a good job. We had parent teacher conferences yesterday, and both of our kiddos are doing really well. So I'm very proud of them. But anyway, back to the point of the day, which is beautiful demons. So I don't even have like an original copy of the very first cover because I never had that in anything but ebook. But I know you guys have heard this before. I was just going to talk a little bit about the story of how I decided to self-publish and how the series has progressed over time. But also just to let you guys know a couple of things. So one, if you want to put hashtag beautiful demons, that will enter you. If you're here on the live stream, it won't work for anyone on the replay. But if you're on the live stream, if you put hashtag beautiful demons, you will get entered to win a signed paperback copy of Beautiful Demons. So that is one. And then also, there is a giveaway over on the blog today, sarracannon.com/blog. It's also linked in the description. There's a couple of giveaways. One is just a surprise giveaway for this live stream, and it is for anyone on the replay as well as here right now, which is in December. I will be doing a New Year course bundle that's going to be a little bit different than the one I did last year. So this is going to be Your Path Forward and HB90. So if you've been wanting to take those 2 courses but haven't taken them yet, there's a link in the description for entering the New Year course bundle. But this year we're going to be adding some new stuff to that about planning 2026. So if you want to join us for that and you are interested, that link is down below. And then also over on my blog, which is also linked in the description, there is a giveaway for the entire set of paperbacks. And I noticed that I have an assistant that's doing the graphics, and they put After Midnight on there. There is no paperback for After Midnight, so just ignore that, please. I didn't see it until after it was posted, but it will be all of the Shadow Demons series books in paperback. So that is on the blog today as well. And of course, still open until Friday is the entire backlist of my books in ebook and in paperback. So lots of giveaways, you guys, lots of giveaways. And we're going to be sending those out and getting them out as soon as possible this year. Some of them have already gone out. You should wear your shirt. I know. I still actually have some of these shirts. So that I only have them in smalls and mediums. So I don't want to do a giveaway for the shirts just because I feel like it's not very size inclusive, but I do have some left over. Did you say new stuff will be added to HB90? So this round of the New Year course bundle, it's not an addition to HB90. And it's not really a new course either. It's just your path forward is long-term planning. HB90 is 90-day planning. But this round of HB90 in the New Year course bundle, there's going to be also an all-day session just to think about what are your goals for 2026 specifically. So it'll be kind of like long-term is the next 5 years, 1 year, and HB90. So we're going to kind of break that down in a little bit of an extra thing this year. So I will keep you guys updated on that, but all of that will be included in the New Year course bundle. Oh my goodness. You got your fit check tea yesterday. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you, Angel. It is so hard to believe. Yeah. How did you create the character Harper, and do you relate to the character in any way? Yeah. So if you guys have any questions about Beautiful Demons or about my author journey or self-publishing or anything, now would be a great time to bring them up because I would love to do just more coffee chat style. But before I answer Jordan's question, just to kind of take you guys through the story one more time. It's kind of like when parents tell a story of when their kids were born, that's a little bit of what we're going to do. So 15 years ago, I pressed publish. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Celeste. That is very sweet. Thank you very much. 15 years ago, I pressed publish on Beautiful Demons, which was a very scary yet totally transformational moment in my life. But how did I get to that point necessarily? So all the way back when I was just turning 30 years old. So this was in 2007. I made a big life change. I was teaching elementary school. I had a master's degree in opera performance, but I had been through so many things in my life that had been pushing me down, telling me I couldn't do things. I had gone through so many shifts, house fires, like so many things. And what my heart really, really wanted was a fresh start, and I wanted to be able to write. And I had notebooks full of story ideas, character ideas, poetry, just all kinds of stuff like that. But I didn't really talk about it a lot because I was scared that it was never going to happen for me. Like, what in the world could I possibly have to offer, to write the writing world? Who am I to even think that I could do that? And, you know, I think sometimes when you go through what are sometimes the lowest points of your life, it becomes a catalyst. And this is kind of interesting that I'm telling this because I just finished a video about subplots that'll go live on Heart Breathings hopefully tomorrow. And this is so true of in terms of like the way subplots happen too, is sometimes at the lowest point of our lives is when we have this moment of realization and awakening to who we were always meant to be. And that was very much the truth for me. I was hitting this point where I was turning 30 and I was saying like, this is not the life that I wanted for myself. I am not being the person I wanted. I don't feel happy. I don't feel fulfilled in my life. I feel like I have gone off the rails and I have no idea how to bring my life back to where I want it to be. And it was this whole process of sort of awakening and trying to give myself permission to do what I wanted to do. And I'm sharing this because I think that for so many people out there, if anybody is watching this right now and you're thinking, I feel the same way. I am not living the life I meant to live. I am not happy where I am, or there are aspects of my life that I wish could be different, or there is a dream that I've always had that I wish I could have the courage to follow. Let me tell you, one of the very best things you can do for yourself is give yourself permission to do the wild and crazy thing of following through on the dream, no matter what anybody else thinks. Because I will tell you right now, when I took the leap and I said, I'm quitting my job, I'm moving to North Carolina to live with a guy that I met online through a video game. Everybody in my life thought I was nuts. They thought I was going through some kind of midlife crisis. I don't know. I was only 30, but like they thought that I was making huge mistakes. Everybody told me I was making like a rash choice and that I was ruining my life and, whatever, because I was leaving what people perceived as stability and I was moving to something that felt kind of, in their eyes, risky, right? But in the end, part of how I knew it was the right thing for me was my intuition. And when we talk about intuition, sometimes we can talk about your gut, right? But I do think sometimes it can be hard to really know what is your gut and what is your fear. And for me, I can only give my experience, but for now, I truly felt in the core of my, like, being, in my stomach, in my brain, when I started thinking about the possibility of following my dream, of doing this wild and crazy thing, of, like, quitting my job and going after my goals, it didn't make me feel like I was shrinking. It made me feel like I was expanding. And to me, that is often a big sign that you're following in the right direction, that you're right, for following your intuition, that you're on the right path, because it felt like everything in my heart, instead of feeling like I can't breathe, I felt immediately like my whole life is expanding. This is so exciting. I can't wait to see what happens next. And yes, there were moments when other people said, well, this is dumb or this is crazy. That I started to think, oh my gosh, am I doing the wrong thing? Is this wild? I better make sure I have a backup plan. I better know what I'm going to do if this doesn't work out. So I tried to be logical and smart about it. But at the core, in my heart, I thought this dream has kept coming back over and over and over and over again, of writing books, telling stories. Every time I would read a book and be inspired by it, I would think, man, I want to do that. I want to make people feel that way. I want to get excited about stories. I want to learn how to craft a story and tell these characters and all these things. And every time I would watch a movie or play a video game or watch a TV show with a heroine that I really loved, I would feel inspired by it. And so I encourage you, whether it's for writing or some other piece of your life, if there is something that keeps calling you, that every time you witness it or you experience it or you think of it, it gives you this lift. It gives you this feeling of being free or being in the right place, or like it makes you feel excited or like butterflies in your stomach, like you're falling in love with the idea. Even if it makes you feel scared or it makes you feel nervous, there is something there for you. And I truly believe it with all my heart that, like, if you can just give yourself permission to follow that excitement, that lift, that like thing that makes you feel alive, it will change your whole life. Like, I cannot even explain how I went from depression, just feeling like everything every day, there were 5, 10 things that just were bringing me down, bringing me down, bringing me down, to finally breaking free of that and saying, "Okay, I'm gonna go after my dream." And, like, it wasn't like, I mean, obviously, I just told you guys I've got shingles being pulled off my roof. I have people's trampolines hitting my window. Like, it's not like everything will always go perfect, but I just truly believe that if we give ourselves permission to follow the thing that makes us feel the spark, that makes us feel alive, it's never going to lead us astray. And it doesn't mean it solves all your problems, and it doesn't mean your life becomes perfect, but it leads you to a purpose in your life. And I just think it's one of the best things we can do for ourselves, is be able to follow that. I have perfect friends. Well, I do have the perfect friends. That is true. I have the perfect community. I worry that I've gotten too old to have my dream. I'm a slow writer, and it's such a slow process to build a readership. Elizabeth, it can be, but that also is a limiting belief, right? And we all have them. We all have to face through them. But the truth is that it doesn't age, like, okay, if you were talking about, like, I want to be, um, I don't know, an Olympic athlete, that is a lot more, age dependent, right? It's very difficult to be a 75-year-old Olympic gymnast, right? However, you can be writing into your 90s. Like, there is no limit to how old or young you have to be to write a best-selling novel. And if you go searching for it, you can find novelists that found their readership with only one big book, right? There are people that wrote one book that changed the world and never wrote anything else. So it can feel like, okay, logically, I see like I'm going to need 10 years to make this dream come true. But the truth is that even if you waited in another 5 years before you got that book out there, you could hit the ground running. But it's just a matter of believing in yourself and not allowing the fear of, I'm not good enough, I'm too old, I'm going to miss out. And I think that one of the most difficult things that so many of us face is this sort of war within ourselves of, I know what I want, and yet I cannot overcome whatever it is that's holding me back. Either I can't identify what it is that's holding me back. I don't know why I don't do the thing. I don't know why I resist it so hard, or that we are so overcome by fear and self-doubt or the worry that it's not going to work out or that we're going to break our own hearts, that we don't give ourselves permission to go after the thing that we really want. Sometimes too, I think it can feel like, if I go after this and it doesn't work out, what will people think of me? What will I have given up? So sometimes, even if we're not exactly happy, like the happiest, or we aren't following every dream, we get really comfortable in our lives the way they are right now. And so it can feel like, well, I don't want to give up what feels safe, even if it's not the happiest. I don't want to give up the comfort of what I know and then have it fail. And then I end up worse off than I am right now. And I completely understand that fear because we see it happen, right? It's not like it's a stupid fear to have. We do see people try and fail all the time. But the key is that if you go the rest of your life without trying, then you will live with the regret of, I never gave it a try, right? And yes, there is always a chance. Like, not everybody that tries to write makes millions of dollars, right? Obviously, most people don't. Not everybody finds massive success, but it's that idea of like, do you want to reach the end of your life thinking, I wish that I had at least given it a chance. I wish that I had at least given it 100%. Or do you want to know? Do you want to at least reach the last of your life and think, I gave it everything I had and I followed my dream? And I think that for me, what helped me take that risk, or what helped me go after it, was the fact that when I thought about the possibility of the future, I knew that I could fail. I knew that maybe I'd never get, like, at the time when I decided to be a writer, I didn't even know. The only thing I knew about self-publishing, so this was like 2007. This was before Kindle existed. There were no really like digital books other than people that had blogs, right? The only thing that people ever said about self-publishing is like people that had to put tens of thousands of dollars into their publishing in terms of getting print paperbacks, and they would put them in their garage and they would go to swap meets and try to sell them by hand and usually lose a lot of money. Or there would be people that got scammed by these publishing deals where they had to pay $20,000 to have their book published and then they lost all their money. That was really all anybody knew about self-publishing. And it was really considered like something that you don't do if you're a real author, right? So when I was first deciding to be an author, I thought that I was going to have to go the traditional way of, I need to write a book that an agent will want according to their specifications. And I need to research and find the right agent and then have them pitch it to a publisher and rewrite it and do whatever I need to do in order to get chosen and picked by a publisher. And that, of course, is still a valid way to publish. But for me, once I started down that path, I was writing, instead of the things that I really most wanted to write, I was writing suddenly because I had this desperate energy. It was like, okay, I allowed myself to take the risk of, I'm going to go after this dream. But as soon as that dream met other writers who had been down the path for a while, immediately I started down a path of self-doubt where I started to get influenced by everything everyone else was telling me was true about publishing, which was, 1, no one's gonna read a book about college students. So that was one thing. Because I was writing a story about a set of twins, a boy and a girl who had both gone off to college, one to New York and one to the mountains in Tennessee. And the brother is accused of murdering his professor and he's gone missing. And the twin sister, who is in this fancy college in New York and spent her whole life like trying to get to this good college, decides to leave college and go try to find her brother and prove his innocence. So this was the story, that it was a paranormal story. That was the first book I tried to write. And as soon as I met up with other writers, they were immediately telling me, no one's going to ever buy that. That would be really hard to sell. Nobody reads books about college age characters. Horror slash, stuff like that is really hard to sell. You're never going to make any money. And I listened to all of that noise. And so they said, here's what you need to write. You need to write something for Harlequin because they buy more stories than any other, and it'll be a shorter book and you can write it really fast and blah, 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 which none of that ended up being true. It's not like it's easy to sell to Harlequin, which I don't even think Harlequin exists the way that they used to anyway. But like they convinced me basically to write a contemporary story, which of course I have now written some contemporary stories, but my heart tends to be more in the paranormal and the young adult and things like that. But I fully gave a year or more to my story of let me write like a tropey fake engagement story. And even though I enjoy reading those stories, I wasn't enjoying writing them. I kept wanting to like make it paranormal or make him a vampire. And I wasn't giving myself permission. Now that I had taken this big risk to follow my heart, I wasn't actually going all in. I was saying, okay, well, let me write it the way I think someone else wants to write it. And I will defend myself just a moment here, because I have talked about this story before and had people say, oh, well, she hates romance. And that is not at all the case. You guys can tell most of the stories that I write have a central romance in it. And it doesn't mean I don't like contemporary tropey stories either. I enjoy reading them, but each of us as a writer has to find the things that light us up. And when I wasn't giving myself permission to write the thing that really made me excited to sit down and write every day, I was taking that dream and diminishing it because I was like, well, this is what I have to write to make money. And this is not a judgment on anyone else's path. This is just me sharing my story, is to say that for me, that was not the path to success. And once I finally got rejected from that story got rejected. And one of my friends said to me, all you ever talk about is these YA books that you're reading, Twilight, Hunger Games, all this stuff. How come you don't write young adult? And I was like, well, everybody told me I can't make money writing young adult. And she was like, well, why don't you just write what you love? And so that was a big moment for me, because I was able to take this. It was like a moment in my journey. So the first moment in my journey was taking the risk of quitting my job and deciding to be a writer. Now, I know not everybody gets that gift of being able to quit. Most people have to actually keep their day jobs, but I was lucky enough to be able to do that. I did still teach voice lessons and I was still like working, but primarily I was trying to be a writer. So I had that freedom. And then I gave up my own freedom by writing what I thought other people wanted me to write. That was one part of the journey. Then once I gave myself permission to write what I wanted to write, which is young adult, I still was reading agents' blogs and trying to figure out what did they want me to write into this YA. So I was still kind of chained to this idea of other people's expectations, what other people want from me. And so I wasn't writing it really the way I wanted to write it. I was still trying to write it the way I felt somebody else would accept it. And that also got rejected. And I just hit this moment in my life where this sort of amazing things culminated together, where number one, I realized I had learned this lesson of I have to write something that I love writing. And number two, I have to write it the way that I want to write it, which is not to say that I don't want to learn craft because I did. And it's not to say that I don't want to write it the way that readers want to read it. But it was instead of me being so desperate about how am I going to make money? How am I going to make money? I kind of gave myself permission finally to say, I just want to write the story that sounds fun to me and let's see if that works. So rejection, rejection, rejection. I had short stories rejected. I entered contests and never won. I had all these like several years, two and a half. Let's see. So this book came out in 2010. So I had 3 full years of writing and being rejected. And when I finally said, okay, I'm not even going to try to get an agent. I've been watching people like Amanda Hawking and Joe Conrath, and there's this thing called a Kindle and there's a Sony reader. And it seems to me like there are some very small amount of authors that are taking their careers into their own hands and just selling them directly to readers through Kindle. I started doing research. I started looking, I was Googling the crap out of it, being like, can I make money publishing books myself, self-publishing, who's making money self-publishing, and trying to find blogs or examples of people. Now, of course, in 2025, we can find thousands of authors making money. But back then it was just like a handful of people, very small, like very minuscule group of people. And there still were a ton of people saying, don't do that. You'll ruin your career. You never do anything. Oh, Joe and I did a workshop early in his career. Yeah. So Joe Conrath was really, so I think his blog was called like a newbie's guide to self-publishing or something like that. And he had a history of traditional publishing, and then he started self-publishing his work. And he had a blog early on. He was one of the first people really publicly talking about the idea of publishing your books yourself through Kindle and things like that. And I was watching and paying attention, but it also, again, for a second time in my career, felt very risky. And so I just had this moment. It was like that two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the road less traveled by kind of moment, where I said, okay, I know back then that if I decide to self-publish and become an indie author, that there are some people who are going to say I'm not a real author, that I'm not good enough, that I don't deserve a publishing deal. It could actually hurt my chances back then of getting a publishing deal. I actually walked through a bookstore and thought, if I do this, I might be giving up the chance to ever hit a list, to ever have my book in a bookstore, to ever be taken seriously. Am I willing to give that up? And I just, again, had this moment where I thought, does it make me feel alive? Does it make me feel excited to try this? And I knew in my intuition. And when we talk about having the courage to follow your dreams, this is the biggest thing that I can tell you has made the difference for me, is if it makes me feel like I'm alive, like it lights me up from the inside, like it feels exciting, then I know that it's not going to take me down the wrong path, that somewhere that is the path to my future life. And every time I have followed that, even if I'm afraid, even if people tell me it's a bad choice, it has always led me to the biggest blessings of my life. And so I encourage you to listen to those voices, those pings, those like whispers that make you go, "Ooh, that would be so much fun. Oh my gosh, I would love to do that." If whether it's writing or, creation of some kind or a new kind of job or going back to school, no matter what it is, if you feel excited when you think about it, and you feel, even if it feels scary, you feel like, oh my gosh, it almost takes your breath away because it sounds, yes, exactly, breathings of your heart. If you can feel that, it's leading you to something that's important in your life, and it's worth the risk every time. So I was binge watching and quilting. I was sewing. I had my sewing machine set up in front of the TV. George and I lived in, less than 1,000 square foot, I don't know, 900 square foot townhouse. And we had no yard. We had no personal space other than this, like in this little townhouse. uh, with terrible carpet, terrible wallpaper. We had almost no money, like other than like I mean, we were doing fine, but we didn't have overflow, I guess you could say. Um, I was sewing and binge watching TV. I was watching Desperate Housewives, et cetera, and I was just thinking, "I don't know what I wanna write. If I'm gonna self-publish, what should I write?" Like, I don't wanna I had been writing, Death's Awakening, but I called it Pandemic, that I guess I read to you guys some of the, examples of that, how that story started. But I wasn't sure. I didn't know for sure what the right story for self-publishing was gonna be. I just knew that I wanted to basically tell a story about a girl that was like a coming of age story. I knew I wanted it to be witchy or vampire or something dystopian maybe, like, I wasn't sure, but I wanted it to be speculative, and that's when my sister was like, "Oh, you should watch this show, Veronica Mars." So I started watching Veronica Mars and immediately fell in love with the character of Veronica Mars and how she solved mysteries, and she was super snarky, but she was also kind of an outcast. Like, she used to be a popular girl, but now she's not so much. And I absolutely fell in love with that character, and I started to think the more I watched it, I was like, "Oh, I love the cliffhangers. I love the mysteries in each episode. I love the romance with kind of the bad boy, like the unexpected romance." And so I took some of the elements of that along with the elements of things that I loved, and I thought, "What if I could write a story about a witch who solves mysteries in her high school?" And that was the first sort of spark of an idea for Beautiful Demons, which, obviously turned into more than that. And I thought, I'm going to write a trilogy, 3 books of a witch who solves mysteries using her magic in her high school. And she's going to be kind of an outcast, and it's going to be a similar kind of snarky character. And that turned into Harper. This book is only about 48,000 words, and I literally wrote it in a month. So I came home from beach summer where I had the word believe tattooed on my wrist, and I thought, okay, I'm going to self publish. I watched that story play out on TV, came up with the idea, and in the month of September, I sat down and wrote this story in a single month. And, yeah, it's like famous last words. I'm gonna write a trilogy that I will write for the next 20 years of my life. Oh, but I sat down, I wrote this story. I had an idea of who was gonna be, so it's a murder mystery. If you've never read this book, hello, go download this book, Beautiful Demons. It's free everywhere books are sold. Um, I thought I knew who the killer was. I did not plot the story. I just sat down and kind of wrote. I didn't really understand plot, just intuitively. I kind of knew how to put a story together, and I had been studying for the last 3 years sort of how to tell a story, how to plot. I knew what a midpoint was, stuff like that, but I didn't know anywhere near what I know now and didn't follow story structure the way I know now. But I think what I did right, one of the things that I did right is I put so many of the things that I love about stories into this story. I went back to the stories that I loved as a kid, like Lois Lowry kind of stories, like Killing Mr. Griffith and like R.L. Stine, Christopher Pike, those kind of stories that I loved as a teen, and as well as like Twilight and things like that that I had been loving as an adult reader of young adult. And I thought, I'm just going to put things that I love into the story. So there's a big house that might be haunted. There's unusual things like so first of all, she's a foster child, which I thought is also really interesting. And I also had a friend that was one of my best friends that was in foster care. And so I had a real soft spot in my heart for kids that go through the foster care system. And it gave a vehicle for this character who has a past that she doesn't even fully understand. And so then she has to figure out where her abilities are coming from and things like that. But there's kind of a ghost that is in the house. Like, does she see a ghost or is it all in her imagination? There's a murder mystery. There's teen drama. There's a hot guy that's mysterious that she likes that rides a motorcycle. Like everything I could think of that I liked, like Houses in the Woods, very similar to how I grew up. I put all of that into this one simple story. And I think that when you are thinking about the things that you want to write, think about how can I put the things I love most into this story and give it just as much of that as it can? Because the more you love your story, the more it's going to resonate with other people. So this is the like third cover of this book. But yes, this cover artist, Raven, who has the current covers, is the same one that did A Mirror of Shadows. She's done almost all of my books except for Fair Hope, and the Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. So yeah, so that was the beginning of it. And so I wrote the book. As soon as I finished it, it was surprising to me who the killer was at the end. Don't put it in the comments, obviously, for spoiler reasons. And I was so excited by the fact that my story surprised me that I just literally started a new document immediately and started rewriting the book. And so I finished it in mid-October. George, my husband, learned how to format books because back then we had no Vellum or other program that automatically formatted your books. You had to just hand code it. And so we hand coded it. He figured it out. We set up, Barnes and Noble had just started. I'm going to pull this question up. Barnes and Noble had just started their indie publishing and they called it Pubit back then. And you couldn't get at the time to Apple Books. You couldn't get to like Borders or any of those other places, but you could publish to a place called Smashwords, and you could publish to Barnes and Noble for they just started their Pubit in October of 2010. And you could get to Amazon. So I published to those three places and put the book at 99 cents and thought, okay, we'll see what happens. And I told everybody I knew on Facebook, okay, I wrote a book and I published it. And if you guys want a copy of, let me see if I can pull it up. I did put together a wallpaper for you guys. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Over on today's blog. So here's what I was saying, like, there's no After Midnight, so just ignore that. But all the other books will be there. You also have your scavenger hunt clue number 11, 12, and 13 will both come out on Friday. But this is what I wanted to show you is I made a wallpaper for your desktop and for your phone. And if you look on it, there's that blue cover that says Beautiful Demons that looks like a cheerleader uniform. That was the original cover for Beautiful Demons. And I just had a friend of mine, like my critique partner's husband, was like, I can make you a book cover. It costs $50. So that was the only money I spent on the book. I had no editor. I self-edited. I had a critique group that helped me edit. It has since been put through edits later, but in the OG 2010, October 29th, 2010, I did not have an editor. I didn't even know how to find one back then. But I had that cover. I thought, oh, it'll be fun to make it look like a cheerleader's uniform with the word demons. And I put it out into the world at 99 cents. And then I was so excited about getting that book out into the world that I immediately wrote book 2 and started obviously going a little deeper into her relationship with Jackson and going a little bit more into the romance and what is really going on in this town. I love book 2 because this is where we really get to see what's going on with these witches. And I had so much fun creating that. And so I published that book in December. So book 1 came out in October, book 2 came out in December and had a very similar book cover. It was almost the same, but slightly different design on the cheerleaders, like chevron pattern. And then immediately started writing book 3. And then in February of 2011, book 3 came out. So that quickly, and part of what started to take off about it was a couple of bloggers who were book bloggers at the time picked up the book because it was 99 cents on Kindle. And so I very, very clearly remember book 3 coming out and somebody had said to me, you should really get new covers because these aren't super great. So that's when I got the first like girl on the cover covers, and book 3 came out with that cover and I redid all the covers, and George and I were like, book 3's out. Let's go celebrate. So we went to the beach in North Carolina and we went out for drinks and dinner, and we got back to the hotel at like midnight or something. And I thought, let me check my sales and see if I sold any books. And I immediately started like screaming up and down. I was like, George, I just made like $600 in a day. And because the first two books were 99 cents, I didn't really make very much money, even though the book started doing pretty well. And it was that February month when book 3 came out and the book was like $2.99. So I'm making more higher percentage and I made so much money. For me, that was just like, oh my gosh, this tells me that I can make this happen. We were so excited. It was just like the whole world of possibility came open in, like, oh my gosh, I could really do this. And I'm doing it on my own. And that felt so good. And I'm telling you, all these people in my writing group who told me, you're making a huge mistake. This is the worst thing you could ever do. Within that first year, started coming to me and saying, how did you do that? Can you teach me how to do it? And those moments changed my whole life. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the readers willing to pick it up. And it just means so much to me, like truly, truly means so much to me. Yeah, there was a moment of vindication as well. Just like I knew I was doing the right thing. But when, and I'm going to answer that question too, but I do, it's like, we don't have a crystal ball to tell us how it's all going to turn out. And so when you're before the result, like it's easy for me to sit here now and tell you how it all turned out, but you hit a point when you're trying to make the decision about whether to follow your dreams that you don't know how it's going to turn out. It could be awful, but that's the point where you have to believe in yourself and you have to trust in your gut. You have to trust your intuition that is saying there's something here for you. And if you feel that, I just know that it cannot lead you astray, right? It's going to take you in the direction of something that is meaningful for you. And it did. And I didn't know until I did it. And then once I did it, it really, really changed everything for me. And yeah, trust the muse. But no, I did not have a degree in creative writing. I never was taught how to write. I have a master's degree in opera performance and singing. And I thought that I was going to be a singer for my whole life. And because of various traumas and other things like that, I just wasn't able to follow through with that. And it was just like, just something that meant the world to me, kind of pulled out from under me in terms of the singing. And so when I really started like trying to find my way again after suffering through various traumas that really just like rocked my whole world, it was always the writing that I came back to. But I didn't have any formal training. And once I decided that I wanted to be a writer, I had always been a reader, but it wasn't until I decided that I wanted to be a writer that I finally started checking out every book I could from the library, learning from other people, getting a critique group, and starting to learn. And I'm 100% self-taught in terms of that, through reading books, obviously. And if you want to see what my favorite books on writing are, is you can just head to my Heart Breathings channel and search for like favorite books on writing, and you'll find a couple of different videos of it. And Kelly had asked, do I have videos on how to self-edit? And I do. So I have a whole series on how to edit your own novel. And then I also have a somewhat more recent video over the last couple of years that is like what my writing editing process is. So if you just go to Heart Breathings, which is my writer focused YouTube channel, and you search for edits, you will find it, or you can find it in the playlists. I'm going to scroll up and see if I had more. The beach in February. I know. We went to the beach in February. I might have missed, if you had a question and I didn't see it, go ahead and repost it. Getting a creative writing degree was more for fun. I got more out of the networking, forced practice, and structured deadlines than the majority of the class material. So I know that it kind of might depend on what you want to write and what path you want to follow, because I know several friends that tried to go to school in terms of creative writing, but they wanted to write romance, for example. And a lot of professors at certain schools will just like tell you shouldn't be writing genre fiction, right? It should be literary. It should be more just there's some judgment there. We'll just leave it at that. Sometimes there could be judgment about writing commercial fiction when you're going to certain kinds of schools. And so just make sure that the program that you're thinking of, if you want to study creative writing, is in alignment with the things you want to write and that your values align, or that you're able to just be like, I will take what I can from it and not worry about any judgment in terms of that. All right, let's see. Yeah, that is good, and it does kinda depend, on the school, I think. Um, Question, was there anything specific that made you finally just go after your dreams, or was it a culmination of everything? So, I mean, really and truly, it was the timing of it, because I was in a marriage that was very, very difficult, and I also went through 2 different house fires, and then also had to go and testify against the man who assaulted me, and all those things coming together in one, like, 1-year period was so, like, rocked me to my core, in terms of I lost everything I owned, like, all my childhood photos, all the dolls I had been collecting since birth, my piano that I got for my 16th birthday, every piece of clothing I ever owned, like, everything that I had was gone. And so losing everything, having to come face to face with this trauma that had happened to me, it just was a huge wake up call. And that all happened like right as I was turning 30. And there was something about, for, I think for many of us, but for me, for sure, hitting those milestone birthdays, 30, 40, and now coming up to 50, just always is a moment of awakening of like, am I in the place that I meant to be? And as I was approaching 30 and I was experiencing so much loss and so much, it was just such a huge catalyst for change. It was like I had this feeling of change or die. And I think this is interesting because it parallels storytelling in so many ways, that our characters will often hit this midpoint in their life where it's like you either change your life or you never become anything. You never become the person, or you lose the thing, or the stakes, raise. And I hit that moment in my own life around 30, is it was just like change or be unhappy for the rest of your life. And I decided to change. And that for me was difficult time in life, but also such a gift, because I think sometimes it can be harder to make the change when everything seems like it's going okay. But for me, I had this massive change. And I had, I had the opportunity to make that change because I had lost everything. And once you lose everything and you have nothing else to lose, it's easier to take a risk, I think sometimes. But in the end, it's just a matter of allowing yourself permission to say, I'm going to do the thing that makes me scared. How do you stop writing for the day? When I get an idea, I just have to write and then it's hard to stop. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I have 2 kids. I have basically 3 jobs. So I can't. I mean, probably back in the day, I wrote a lot more, like before I had kids and things like that. I would just write whenever I wanted to, but now everything has to be planned, and I can only write until I can write. The only times that I really allow myself to get swept away in the writing is when I give myself no, like boundaries. So like this is why I go away on writing retreats, because I am able to stay up all night if I want to when I'm in a writing retreat. But on a normal week, I have to get up at 6:30 and I have to take my kids to school and I have to be ready for that. And I have to make a video and I have to do this. So like my life now is very different than my life was when I first started writing. So yeah, I wish that I could just get lost in the writing now, but it's very difficult for me to do that with my time constraints. So for me, it's just I have to stop writing when it's time to go pick up the kids or to take Evie to gymnastics, or I got to get to bed because I have to be up in 6 hours. Sounds like a proper Saturn return, a threshold for us to live a more authentic life. Do we have another Saturn return coming at 50? I don't know anything about Saturn returns, but I'm definitely feel like I'm going through it, Amanda. This year I'm definitely going through another transition about what's coming up next for me and really following my dreams. And the truth is, like, the life that I lead now, 15 years later, is so drastically different than the life I led back before I made the leap to to self-publish, it's like I don't even recognize the person that I was before. It has changed me so completely, and everything, like, beyond anything I could have dreamed has come into my life. But as many of us, um, see often is when I don't know. I don't know exactly how to explain that, but just sometimes once we can follow our dreams, and then once we get caught up in the, like, now it has to pay the bills, and now it has to, like, there's people waiting, and now I have this responsibility. It can take this thing that was once just pure joy and fun and make it heavier, because now there's all these responsibilities with it, and it has to, like, support you, and it has to please other people, and you get to hear other people's perspectives on how you're doing and things like that. It can begin to steal some of the joy over it. And I went through more, more issues and trauma, and sort of, I didn't fall out of love with writing, but I think I got in my head fear around it. Like, oh, I'm not writing fast enough. I'm not writing the things that people want. I am scared. And so I let some of that fear make it harder for me to write. And one of the greatest joys right now of my life is that I feel like I have overcome that, and I'm finally back to a place where I'm creating from joy. And I know I say this a lot, but, like, I would not be there if it wasn't for this specific community, because even though I have broader writer community, I have Heart Breathings, and I have, more people that read my books than show up for these live streams. This community here, Broken Chapter Society, coffee chats, being able to share the things that I'm going through and talk vulnerably with you all has made such a massive difference in my life. And I don't think I would have found my way back to joy if I didn't have the support that I have in this small community. And so I just hope you know how much you make a difference individually to me, whether you comment or not. Just seeing the numbers, seeing the likes, seeing some of you that comment, the emails that come through with the support of, like, we're here for you no matter what, the Discord community, like, I cannot even express to you. And if there's any small piece of that that I can give back to you, it's just to say, following your dreams and going after the thing that feels crazy to other people, that feels risky, that feels like it's not logical, is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. How? Oh, so we have a couple questions. You wear so many hats. How do you balance it all, especially being a coach and a writer? It's so tough. It is tough. And I don't feel like I have always done such a great job. For one thing, obviously, HB90, many of us know this. Many of you have taken this class, but it's not always that simple. But I think, too, that this is part of where I feel like I'm going through it a lot right now, is that for me, the balance doesn't come from a daily balance. It comes from, okay, in the month of October, I'm mostly focused on writing and Spooktacular, with trying to create videos in between for Preptober. But there's been no other social media, no promotion. I've spent less time with my family. So it's like going in and out of, rather than balance, it's been going in and out of focus. Like, right now I'm focused on this. Right now I'm focused on this. And I have come to a point where I'm realizing I can't really scale up to where I want to go without changing the way that I'm doing things. So part of how I was managing the balance was I wasn't writing at all. I was focusing it all in on Heart Breathings and courses and things like that. And I was only writing in the cracks, like in between, and that wasn't enough to fulfill me. So then I'm like, okay, now I got to rebalance. And so it's a constant kind of shifting and rebalancing. But what I've realized probably over the last 6 months is, if I really want to do it all, I've got to start doing things differently. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into even my, like, planner lineup and things like that. And we could do a whole coffee chat on this once we're through A Mirror of Shadows. But I think it's a matter of understanding that if you have more to balance on your plate than you actually have time and energy, then there's literally no way to balance it. And so it's either you give stuff up, or you get more help, or you find better systems to be more efficient. And so I'm kind of doing all of those things. And I'll share more about that as we get to the new year, I guess. How did you juggle being a mom and writing? I'm homeschooling 3 kiddos and finding it hard to consistently feel creative and make the time to write. So I had my first child. So we actually, George and I started secretly without talking about it. We started infertility treatments the same month that I published. And so I started my self-publishing journey the same month I started my journey really towards becoming a mom. We had been trying to have a baby for over a year and a half and nothing was happening. So we started that process. So I had Andrew, I was pregnant with him when I wrote and published book 5. That book came out in January of 2012. Andrew was born in June of 2012. So I had one last book of that series, so I thought, and then I went on to write more of it. And that book came out in December. So that was at that point the longest I had been without writing, was that 11 months between books 5 and 6. And it was hard. It was really hard. So, and I didn't have a full-time job. So if you have a full-time job in addition to the full-time job of parenting, it makes it even harder. But part of what worked for me, a couple of things. One, and it was easier once I had Evie because George wasn't working a normal job, and he was more of a support help at home. But one thing that made a big difference for me was understanding where there was non-negotiable writing time for me and getting the support that I needed around that period of time. So even though I was tired, when they say like sleep when your baby sleeps, when Andrew would go to sleep the first time, I started to understand his rhythm that I would put him down at like 6 p.m., but he was going to be back up at midnight or whatever. So I would say, okay, even though I should get some rest, I sacrificed that rest. And I said from 6 to midnight is going to be my writing time. And I started gamifying it. So George and I would be in the same office and we tried to make it as fun as possible for me to get that writing time in. So we would alternate. So one thing we would do is, he would go into like a first person shooter game. And when he would go into the game, he would say start. And we came up with this system of like however many points he got in his shooter game, we would compare that to how many words I wrote. And so if he would be in there for 15 minutes, I would just write as furiously as I could for 15 minutes. And then we would compare and I would either win or I would lose. And it wasn't like there was a reward for it, but it was just that like external sort of motivation of knowing somebody else is here and I've committed to writing and we're going to come up with a system to make it a game. That was helpful. 2 was trying to take the times that I was with the kids and be as fully present as I could with them, so that when I had a little bit of time to myself, I didn't feel guilty about because I know there's a lot of mom guilt sometimes that comes along with like taking time for yourself. So I just tried to be as present with them as I could and then not feel any guilt as much as I could about going off to a coffee shop and leaving them with George or a babysitter or something like that. And then another thing was it's like find your currency. I am heavily motivated by rewards. And so I would buy things like pens or stationery or notebooks or washi tape, and I would put them in what we called a sweetie store, and I would have to earn them. So if it was $1 pen, I had to write 1,000 words to earn it from the store. And that also really helped. So any way for me that I could gamify the system or give myself rewards or make it fun, the better it was. The other thing that I started to do was go on Priceline. And I know not everybody can do this, but I would be like, okay, I'm going to go on Priceline and I'm going to find a Holiday Inn or a hotel and just get one night. And I would show up at 4 p.m. to check in and I would stay up all night long and I would write as much as I could. And that momentum of that dedicated writing time would help me then write in the in-between times. I don't know if any of that will help, but that was the most helpful thing that I could do. And it's just a matter of, for your own schedule, sort of looking at it and saying, where are the times that I could write and when am I going to have energy and how can I sort of manufacture energy for myself, either through rewards or making it fun or writing a story that just feels like it has more momentum to it. Some of that can be helpful too. I don't know if any of that is helpful, but hopefully. I have a Chiron return coming, which checks with what you're communicating. Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to look that up. Oh, don't tell me Mercury retrograde is coming. I don't want to know. You turn 50 January 4th. So I'll be 49 January 23rd. Oh, early 60s. Okay, okay. Not quite there yet, but if you talked to past Sarah 15 years ago, what would you tell her? Oh, Abby, that is a good question. That is a very good question. If I was talking to like just newly published Sarah, I would tell her, number 1, please don't ever doubt your abilities, because success is not about who the very best writer is. Success is about allowing yourself to be on your own journey and taking it one step at a time and believing in yourself, because any comparison that you do for everyone else is only going to slow you down. So if you want to get to the place you want to go and you want to love it and you want to enjoy it, you have to just stop worrying about how you compare to other people or why other people are getting ahead before you, or any of that comparison stuff. Just believe in yourself, believe in the work that you're doing, and have as much fun as possible. The second thing I would probably say to past Sarah would just be, don't let anybody else tell you what you should do, because you can search all you want for outside opinions, but in the end, it's your own intuition that's always going to lead you to the right place. And I wish I had that advice, because I would have avoided a lot of mistakes. Whew. Okay. I think sorry, we're trying to. What about thinking that YouTube is the job and the writing is the fun stuff? Yeah, that is a possibility, but I think that in a way, that is how I have been thinking of it, and because YouTube is the job, that always feels like it takes the priority for me, and so for me, the opposite is working better, where I say, "You know what? Writing is the job and the YouTube is the thing that you share when you have time." That has helped me a lot more. I am gonna do this giveaway here in just a minute. Um do you have a book in mind when it comes to AI in terms of the job market, transportation, and romance? I don't understand this question 100%. Um, I'm not sure what you mean. HB90 saved my life, literally made my health a priority in 2021. Mammogram found cancer early and saved my life. I love you, Jody Jean. I do truly love you. And I'm so proud of you. Did you have every book planned for the Shadow Demon Saga, or was it like each book sparked a new idea? I had literally no idea what was going to happen in the next book. The way that I made my way through that entire series, which of course we haven't reached the end, is I just was like, okay, I'm following my intuition. This is what feels like the ending of this book. And then as soon as it was over, I would be like, okay, what happens next? And I literally had no idea. And then as I got deeper into the series, like once I hit book 3 and I knew I was going to keep writing, that's where the longer term ideas started coming from. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if we go into the shadow world? And what if this happens? And oh my gosh, what if this is who Harper really is? And what if this is what really happened to her mom, or, whatever. That's where that was when the ideas started expanding a little bit. But even some of the magic system and how big the Order of Shadows was, I had no idea any of that when I first started. And it wasn't like once I got to books like 6 and 7, or not 6, but 7 and 8, that's when I started planning further ahead to kind of know. But even with book 11, there were still surprises that I had to deal with when I started working on book 12. So no, I did not have every book planned by any means. All right, let me go ahead and, oh, George is here. What is that? Is that a cartwheel? Oh, I'm so far behind. Will you do a retreat next month? I think what I'm going to do, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind on comments. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm going to miss them. I will do a retreat, but I think I'm going to do an at-home retreat instead of going away to a hotel. I think I'm going to say, like, here's how I do a stay-at-home writing retreat, because I think that Evie has really been struggling with me being gone. Although there is a part of me that is also like, I really would love to go to Austin and go to the Erin Condren store, because they have a lot of new Hello Kitty Christmas stuff that's probably going to be in the store. And yeah, I want to go. So I don't know yet. I haven't decided. Is there anything you would change in the Shadow Demon story? Number 1, would change that Jackson smokes, because there was just something back in the 2010s about like guys that seemed like the bad boys, they all smoked. And so I had Jackson smoking, and I know it's such a small thing, and actually I could easily go and change that now if I wanted to, but I was like, now I think back and I'm like, I kind of wish he didn't smoke, but he doesn't smoke later in the series, but that's one thing that I would change. Anything else I would change? I don't know if I would bring in, so like if I could go back and do it all over again with the skill level that I had now, I would probably expand some of the storylines and expand the POVs earlier, because we don't start getting multiple POV until book 7, but I probably would weave multiple POV in before. As an entrepreneur, can you recommend a business course that helped you a ton? Uh, I mean, I took a lot of courses. So I took like the money boot camp, I took B school, I took product launch formula, and all of those were like a little bit helpful, but I think the biggest business thing that has helped me is working with Amber McHugh, with modern CEO stuff. That has been the biggest because she focuses more on implementation instead of just learning. And for me, that's been the biggest. So if you ever get a chance to work with Amber, and actually there will be an opportunity in January for anybody that is interested in entrepreneurship to do a combo, like a HB90 version of Modern CEO. We haven't fully announced that yet, but it is coming. Your favorite book is When They Went to the Shadow World, so that's Rival Demons. Any snippets you want to share about Slate? No, I'm not sharing any things about Slate. However, I think, yeah, I'm going to hold on to it, but I think you guys are going to love the second half of the book because we're going to get a little bit more of Slate's point of view, and you're going to get to know him and why he is the way he is a little bit more. So we're going to deepen all of those characters. Okay, let me choose a winner. So this is for Beautiful Demons paperback. We have definitely gone over the hour. Alyssa, you are the winner of today's paperback. Just send me an email, sarah@sarracannon.com. Oof. Oh my gosh. That's not going to be right, but it's going to be close. Yes, this is true. This is true. He does quit. He does quit. And it's actually, if we're talking about smoking, it's actually a moment where I never really go into it, but it's this idea of when Harper is first talking to him, really, she says, those will kill you, which if you know, they would not ever kill him. So that's kind of a funny thing, but, oh, you had a call with Amber today? That's so fun. How did you decide how many POVs should be in any particular novel? That is a very good question, Denise. So one of the reasons I started writing multiple POV in that series is because when I hit book 6 and the world was so big and the big battle was so big, I was like, I was literally pulling my hair out because I was like, how am I going to show this big battle only from Harper's point of view? And it was so limiting that when I started moving into the next book in the series and decided to extend the series, I really put some thought into how big is this world going to be and whose perspective is going to begin to influence the plot itself. And that is the same thing about Eternal Sorrows, is when you start thinking about it, it's like I wanted those core people, but I also need the Dark One and the Witch, because these are all people who are going to be experiencing things that we as the reader need to understand in order to fully get a good idea of the plot. So when we're in a Mirror of Shadows, that's why I'm starting to bring in Slate's point of view, and we're going to start to have other POVs throughout, because there comes a point where it's like, in order to fully understand the theme of the story, the plot of the story, we need these additional characters' POVs, because we've hit a point where the main POV character can't possibly know what's going on inside Slate's head. And it adds to the tension of the story to know that what she believes is not the same as what he's going through. And the more you start thinking about the plot in that way of like, what is it that the reader actually needs to know? Which, like for the disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, I knew, for example, when I first started writing it, I knew that I was going to have the POV of each person who was there that night. But I originally was trying to write it where we were getting their point of view in the present day. And once I realized that we need just Lorelai's POV in present day and everybody else's past tense, like their story leading up to it, it opened up the whole story. So sometimes it's intuitive and sometimes it's really a matter of saying, okay, whose perspective do we need to see in this story in order to get the full story, in order to truly understand it? And that's why in romance, you usually get each of the characters that's involved in the romance, because we need to see his perspective and what he's going through, and we need to see her perspective, or, whatever genders, but it's like, because we won't get the full story without those POVs. And so if you can figure out whose perspective do we need in order to get the full story, that will help inform how many you need. Yes, it's going to be cool. All right. So it's Sarah at sarracannon.com without the P. Just typed it wrong. All right, you guys, that is it. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. I think that's it. We've gone 10 minutes over, but I hope that as you start thinking about what you're going to carry into 2026, about what you want to do with your life. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what anybody else says you're capable of. If there is something inside you that keeps lighting you up, it keeps sparking, that you think there's something there for me, then I promise you there really is. And I hope that, if anything, my story of following my heart in a time where it felt really risky will help encourage you to follow your heart and follow your dreams too. So, all right, you guys, thank you for the anniversary wishes. Please head to the links down in the description below to enter to win the New Year course bundle if you'd like to take those classes. Even if you've taken HB90 in your path forward before, you can still win the bonus day if you join that. And then also I'm giving away a full set of paperbacks. So go check it out. Thank you all for being here. If you have not read my Shadow Demon Saga, go download it. I think the links are on the blog over there. And I will see you all tomorrow night for our final, it might be our final Twitch stream, but probably not. We'll probably keep going into November. And then I will see you Friday for our final official Spooktacular live stream. And then next week we'll get back to reading A Mirror of Shadows. Thank you for all your support and love. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.